Welcome to another episode of The Mind's Eye with Mike Lowry. I wanted to piggyback off the last episode about getting to know me. I feel like there's some things that I can put into perspective for you to give you some raw examples as to how I was able to overcome some of the things that I was dealing with by just changing my perspective. Stay tuned. So, as I've stated, I wanted to talk to you guys about me. Just piggybacking off the last episode, getting to know me, and kind of giving you guys more of a raw example as to why I think the way I do, and kind of like, where Mind's Eye all came from. To believe it or not, it all kind of stemmed from like one of the best worst things that ever happened to me. And I said best worst was because, on one side of it, it really kind of put me down and put me in a really bad situation. On the other side of it, it brought a lot of joy. The great side of it, it was my kids. They bring a lot of joy to me, throughout everything that I've dealt with and gone through with them. It's a blessing to have, a part of your legacy moving around in the world that came, literally from you, that can go on and, in life to do great things. But the hard part is what I want to talk to you about. And we'll get back to the good part. Early on, I had a kid at 19 years old, and I wasn't sure how to accept that, respond to that, or even what being a dad was. But I took on the challenge. And with that being said, it took on other challenges that I wasn't necessarily ready for at a young age. That thing that was detrimental to me was child support. Child support really set me back. And I'm not saying that kids don't need financial support. They do. I just think the way it was set up wasn't, in the best interest of everyone involved. I'm meaning the child, the mother, and also the father. This day and time, we do have a lot more fathers being involved in their children's lives. And I don't think there's a system that should be set up that should cause anyone to struggle or put them in situations where they can't achieve basic necessities and goals, to the point where it keeps them from actually spending or doing more things with their kids, just based on the financial burden that it has created. So with that being said, like over the years, I remember a time I was working a job making about $40,000 a year, and my child support was $1,700 a month. Yeah, I said $1,700 a month. And as we know, this day and time, especially even years ago, you taking that much money out of your account, there's not much you can really do that's left making $40,000 a year. And I never forget the judge told me that you don't really have to do anything else but pay this child support. And so I'm thinking like, wow, so you're not even really encouraging me to really do what's right. It's just to pay the money. And for me, I don't feel like that's what, being a father is or anything like that. I think it's more important to also be physically, involved in the child's life as well. But if you can't even afford to pick the child up because of how expensive the child support is, it kind of puts you in a tough situation. So like anyone would, I moaned, I complained, I yelled, I was frustrated. I didn't know what to do. I was a loss for words. I kept trying to fix the situation so that I can find the balance in spending more time with my kids and also financially supporting them as well. But the way the system was seeing it as, just pay the money and you'll be fine. And as we all know, that's really not the case. So I encourage everybody to try and work it out amongst themselves. Just because you guys don't work it out and you guys don't see the eye to eye on a particular relationship, don't allow the child to be in the middle of that. Allow the child to be, a child, and love that child as a mother and father. Don't use the mother or the father as anything detrimental that can physically or financially or mentally hurt that situation, because all you're doing is affecting the child. And that's bringing more, situations upon the child as to where they don't get to see their father. The kids don't know they're getting money. Or it's vice versa. There's also women on child support too. So I don't want to make this a one-sided thing. But that should never be a situation where we're like putting the child on the back burner and making these things all about money. And it does more harm than it does good. Therefore, for so long, I was demotivated. I didn't want to really do much of anything. Even like working was like, dude, like I'm working a full-time job and can't pay my bills, and I made decent money at the time years ago. Was okay years ago. And I'm struggling. I can't see my kids because I can't afford to pick them up or do anything with them. And how is this helping the situation? If the mother in any situation can still be bitter, the father is struggling financially, and then the child isn't really seeing what a two-parent household is like. And I'm not saying to stay with someone that you feel isn't going to work out or whatever the case may be, but I feel like we should do a better job of co-parenting and finding a solution to where, we can come together and do what's in the best interest for the child. There's a lot of guys out here that really want to do right by their kids. And I hate the stigma that black men aren't there for their kids, because every black man that I'm friends with, that I know, are in their kids' lives. They financially support their kids, they spiritually support their kids, and they physically support their kids as well as mentally support their kids. I grew up with a great father myself. So I just hate situations when I see them that are similar to mine, and I want to speak up about that and do something different to help, the situation. If the system is not helping the situation, maybe I can speak to the people to help the situation. But with that being said, I'm really saying all that to say that it wasn't until I changed my mindset is when my situation changed. And I realized that, changing your mindset, your perspective change, and even if the situation doesn't change right away, the way you see it does. And as long as if the way you see it changes first, then the situation definitely starts to change, because your mindset is open to how to change it or what to do different and how to embrace where you are. So I'll never forget one day, once I made the decision to change my mindset on the situation. Of course, you pray about it. Of course, you do what you can within the situation that you have, at hand. I'll never forget. I was stressed out one day, and I was like, I need a drink. Let me go have a drink. Went to a bar, had a drink, and I was just thinking of like all the things that I could do different to better my situation, to like find a way to, make more money to justify this enormous child support, or figure out a way to, get it down. But I'm open-minded to change. I'm not even complaining anymore about what's happened to me. I'm not even like frustrated anymore. I'm just working on trying to find a solution. And I ran into this lawyer sitting right at the bar, just having a great conversation, just talking about life, talking about situations. And I told him, what I was dealing with as I'm sharing this with you. And he told me, he said, all the things to do. And I did them. I went to court. I did everything he told me to do. I did not pay for a lawyer. I did not, hire anybody or what have you. I just did what this guy told me that I met at the bar. I don't even remember his name anymore. And when I did that, not long, I think it was like the next cycle, the child support had went down from $1,700 to $900. Just by listening to what he said, being open-minded. If I was still bitter about the situation, if I put myself in a situation where I couldn't change the situation, so I was still frustrated, still upset, still oh my God, I don't know what I'm gonna do. There's nothing I can do. I'm gonna just sit here and pout about it. Or I could just be open-minded to find the solutions. And sometimes, you have to be in the right mind state to be able to receive certain things to help you, cultivate your situation forward. And the craziest thing about that too is with my youngest daughter, I had to fight for her. I was paying child support, making a lot more money, but I'm still paying child support, which I still feel was extremely high, but I couldn't see her. I filed the paperwork with the courts. It took because of the pandemic, it took 2.5, 3 years of after filed paperwork and still continue to pay child support and not being able to see my child. That's one of the toughest things that I ever had to deal with, is paying money and not being able to see my child. But besides the money, it was just really Like, dang, like, this is my part of my legacy. This is my seed, and I don't get to spend time with her because of bitterness, and which is unfortunate. And that's why I encourage you guys is, if it's not going to work out, there's no reason why a man shouldn't see his child. There's no reason why a woman shouldn't see their child, unless they're like unsafe, or, I don't even have to get into the reasons as to why a parent shouldn't see their child. There are only a few things, and we already know what those things are. Fast forward, let me tell you, man, like, when you change your mindset, man, God he just pours into that perspective, and you start seeing stuff differently. And once you see stuff differently, you start doing things differently. And so time went on, and I finally got the time where my situation was heard, and now I have joint custody of my youngest daughter. Man, I now have joint custody of my youngest daughter just because I changed my mindset, and I started to, do what made sense. Because, like, a lot of us, we fight wrong. And that's something that a lot of people have to understand, that, like, a lot of y'all fighting and doing what you think is right, but you haven't taken a step back to say, okay, maybe I'm going about my approach wrong. Maybe I can fight in a different way. And that's what I did. And now I have joint custody of her. My oldest daughter was the first one that I went through a lot with, and now she's 19 with her own daughter. Yeah, I'm a grandfather. And she's been staying with me like a couple weeks at a time, with her and my granddaughter. And I'm thinking, like, man, like, years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 5 years ago, like, things were rough. Like, and then now to look back and say, man, when you change your perspective, your situation changes. And not exactly the situation itself, but once your perspective starts to change, you start seeing your situation differently. And if you see your situation differently, it appears to be different, even if it is the same. But once you continue to look at the situation differently, it has no choice but to eventually change, because your perspective is at a point where it's like, what's next? How can I move through this? Versus be stagnant, complain, be bitter. I'm not getting anywhere doing that. But if I focus on what's at hand, figuring out, being open-minded and clear-headed to situations, I can do something different. I know how to move. I know how to fight. I know what to move away, to take away, or what have you. But so many of us focus on the situation and how it's not working for us. We're so close-minded on to how it can work for us. And one of the biggest things that I wanted to say, I've been thinking about this a lot. If you can't overcome the way you think about your current situation, then that's the highest you can go. Again, if you can't overcome the way you think about your current situation, then that's the highest you can go. And what I mean by that is, if your situation is so detrimental to you that you can't change your perspective about it, then you can't grow and move forward. Like, every day there's challenges and things that we deal with, some smaller, some bigger. And then in those things that we deal with every day, we choose to have the perspective of, okay, well, maybe there's something next, or why is this happening to me? And that's how I used to be. I was the person that was like, man, why is this happening to me? This isn't fair. This and that. And then I said to myself, I was like, you know what? It did happen to me. What can I do about it? How can I fix it? How can I change it? How can I at least make it better for myself? Given the situation. And sometimes it's hard. And sometimes it takes time. It's not an overnight process, but at least start the process. At least start to have a changed perspective or a changed mindset in a particular situation. I promise you, it'll work out for you. It worked out for me. Like, years ago, do you think that, like, man, I would have joint custody of my youngest daughter? No. Do you think that my oldest daughter would be staying with me, with my granddaughter? No. I would have never thought that in a million years, given the way the situation had transpired in the beginning. And that complaining turned into acceptance. That this acceptance turned into a changed mindset. That changed mindset gained a new perspective. And doing all those things in that order allowed me to be able to receive what's good. And that's being in my kids' lives with no issues, no arguments, no complaints. All that stuff is behind me now. And it just started with me changing my mindset, changing my perspective about what happened. Well, the saying goes, what? It's 10% of what happens to you is 90% of how you respond to it. And I know, like, this isn't an overnight process, as I've stated before, but it's worth a try to change your mindset. What do you have to lose? Just change it. Change your perspective. Just try to get insight from other people there's a lot of people that has dealt with similar things to what you're dealing with. Don't be ashamed to tell your story. It took me a second to actually, express my story. But I realized there are people that are dealing with something similar, and it may not necessarily be with like child support or having kids or things like that, but you are dealing with something that's holding you back. And if you change your mindset and perspective about that situation and learn to embrace it, I promise you, you will find the tools and situations to how to move through it. Just believe and have a different perspective of moving forward. Well, that concludes another episode of The Mind's Eye with Mike Lowry. Thank you so much, guys, again, for staying, on this journey with me, being part of what I'm doing here. I'm here to serve you guys. Again, if you guys have any questions or concerns or anything that you want me to talk about in particular, please don't forget to comment below. I really do appreciate you. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Until next time.